So I've gotta tell you how impressed I was by trying to schedule this podcast by having, bigger guests on. Usually you hear from their publicist, their assistant after like a couple of days or maybe a week. I heard back directly from you within like 2 hours. So I really appreciate that. That was great.
Absolutely. Well, I do my own. I kind of do my own scheduling, and I'm a bit of a luddite, so I've got to keep up with it, or it gets gone.
Oh, I can imagine. So I'm super excited to chat with you. Great to virtually meet you, Joel. So on the Farm Traveler podcast, I kind of interview farmers and ranchers around the country focused on direct to consumer, agritourism, and stuff like that, where it's kind of a better way to engage with the consumer. And you're doing an amazing job of that at Polyface Farm. And honestly, it kind of seems like you are, I don't know, the face of regenerative ag, it kind of seems like.
Yeah, well, our foray into this, we now have in last spring a year ago, we built the LLC, the Lunatic Learning Center. Of course. And we built this Lunatic Learning Center that seats 300 to 400 people. Depends on how tight you want to seat in. But so many good things in life, Trevor, are serendipitous. You don't just sit down and have a focus group, and come up with answers. That you kind of bumble along. And in the fall of 2020. All right. We're in lockdowns. All conferences got canceled. Nobody was
Mhm.
doing anything. And Weston A. Price Foundation, you probably know Weston A. Price Foundation, maybe you do. Anyway, they have a national conference. They had one scheduled for Atlanta, and about 3 weeks before the conference, the big conference center called them and said, "Hey, we're canceling you because we just got a chance to book out the whole place for 90 days." Well, they were starved for business, and so they paid the whatever $50,000 cancellation penalty to Weston A. Price, and Weston A. Price is, and I mean, 3 weeks out, you can't resurrect that. So they're sitting there, in their office up in D.C., kind of crying on each other's shoulders. Somebody says, "Hey, I wonder, we ought to do something. I wonder if Joel let us come down to Polyface." So they called me. I said, "Sure, come on." So we we kind of cleaned up one of the hoop houses where chickens are in the wintertime, and put down some fresh bedding, some bales of hay, and they came, and I mean they filled that thing out in 24 hours, and came down, and people, again, this is November of 2020, in the throes of the lockdowns. People came in here, no masks, they're hugging, they're smiling. I mean, people levitated out of here. They were starved for that. And when it was all over, it was like an epiphany for me. I said, "Whoa, I wonder how many other organizations are out there having this kind of issue." So we essentially, that winter, I kind of put out some feelers, and in 2021 we launched, and we had six gatherings in 2021, different organizations, different kinds of groups, and it was all great, except we could not get that hoop house cool enough in the summer. I'm used to sweating. I don't mind sweating, but you get people, working in an office used to air conditioning, and throw them in a hoop house, even with shade cloth and all the sides rolled up and everything. It still was too hot. So we had a kind of come to Jesus time there that winter, and said, "Look, I think we're on the tail of something good. Do we want to invest and move this forward, or do we want to just, well, it was nice and we'll just quit?" Everybody said, "Oh, this is fantastic. Let's move this forward." So we built the LLC, and last year we did 6. This year it looks like we're doing 7,
Hmm.
and it's just been incredibly well received. We can, one of the biggest bugaboos for people that want to do a conference, and want to care about the food, is dealing with a conference center's food requirements. "Oh, we can't let that come in here. The underwriters won't do that." And there's this it almost becomes the tail that wags the dog for event organizers if they care about food. Here, our biggest deal is they don't even have to think about food. We got the best food in the world. We feed everybody and everybody loves it, And so we've taken that off of people's plate. And okay, so, you can't spend the night here. You have to go, 15 minutes away in town. There's plenty of beds there. It's a wonderful, bucolic farm setting. It's just been fabulous. And so suddenly we've stumbled in to another, $250,000 to $300,000 enterprise that we didn't even conceive or think about just 3 years ago. It's pretty cool.
It sounds like it. And so the people that are doing that, the LLC, are they new to regenerative ag? Have they been doing it for a while and they want to learn from the master? Like what's the kind of demographics there of people that are joining it?
Well, we haven't done, let's see, we've done two gatherings that were Stockman grass farmer gatherings, but the rest of them, Trevor, are not regenerative ag. They're wellness summits. They're financial. We had Manward do their first national conference last year here. Try it out. It was fantastic. It's a kind of libertarian alternative financial outfit. So we've got different kinds of events, different kinds of groups. This year it's really cool. For the first time, the National Association of Nutrition Practitioners, NANPT, is coming here. They've never had a conference on the East Coast. They've always done their annual conference in California, and last year, I was one of the speakers there, and I just I was there, and I had the ear of the executive director. Said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing this on the East Coast?" "Well, no, we never thought about doing it on the East Coast." I said, "Well, let me tell you a place that you could come." Planted the seed. They've been working on it all winter, and they've now given a complete green light. So they're going to come with the NANP, first time on the East Coast, the whole nutritional national practitioners group. So these are not regenerative ag things. They are everything that's whatever out of the box. We had Chris Martinson here with Peak Prosperity the first year, and they did a conference. So there's a lot of outfits that would like to get together, but in today's climate, they'd love to get to a place that's not a Sheraton, Hilton, or Marriott, with the food issues and with the air conditioning and the whole deal. This is open air. I mean, we're under a shed. It's a wonderful shed. It's a three-tier amphitheater. It's totally rustic. We built it out of poles and our own milled lumber, so it's really cool looking. But people love rustic. They love authentic. And we're just really excited. And of course, so you have the event space, but then you have things that happen as a result of it. You build bridges, you have people come that wouldn't normally have. And so it's pretty cool.
I bet. I mean, you can only get so much from a conference center. I'm sure having it there on site at you guys is so cool. And that name, the Lunatic Learning Center, tell me, where did that come from? That's very catchy. I love it.
Well, yeah, so it's the LLC. So yeah, so I'm known as the Lunatic Farmer. Back years and years ago, I just got tired of being put in a box. And I'm pretty libertarian politically. I'm conservative religiously, and and so many times I got into situations where I'm doing an organic farming conference kind of thing, and people assume, oh, you're an environmentalist. Well, you must be for bigger government, more agencies, more regulations. And I just got tired of being put in that box. So for my own sanity and fun, I said, you know what? I'm going to make a new moniker. I'm going to come in. I'm going to say, I'm the Christian libertarian, environmentalist, capitalist, lunatic farmer. And it took off, and it takes that edge off of the stereotypes, off the assumptions. And I can, instead of being frustrated with it, I can have fun with it and play with it. And everybody else smiles too, because they like it too. So it takes that tension out, and I can just be who I am.
That's such a good idea. I mean, I feel like that's breaking barriers. Like I'm imagining that right now on a name tag, and it would just be super long. I mean, you're poking fun at yourself and being honest
Yes.
about yourself and your viewpoints, and I feel like that's a really good bridge building thing, like you were talking about. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is very much a bridge building thing because you know, the beauty of that, the Christian libertarian environmentalist capitalist lunatic farmer, there's something in there that almost everybody can appreciate, and there's something in there that almost everybody kind of cringes at. And
Mm.
so, if you can kind of keep that box open with a smile, that's a good thing.
I like that. And so, talking about all that, I was reading up on you, and I'm trying to be a good podcast host. I want to read up on you and my guests, but not too much, where I can still be surprised.
Yeah.
And I was reading an article that you wrote on, I think, Open Values on the website, and it was talking about your background and actually how you and your family got started into farming. And it seems like you guys and your dad, especially, were both all very, very intentional about what you're doing at the farm. And and you wrote a really great quote in the article talking about, like, does God care about what we do at the farm? Does he care about what we put on a plate? And the whole article just really kind of made me think about just being intentional, like the intentionality of you guys of being farming. And so, can you tell us about that a little bit? Kind of like how you and your family got started in regenerative ag, and then kind of how you're bringing God and your faith kind of into this?
Sure. So yeah, so my grandfather, my dad's dad, was a charter subscriber in 1948 to Rodale's Organic Gardening and Farming magazine, and so he was an early proponent. And his garden in Indiana, he always had big compost piles. He had an old octagonal chicken house
Mm,
with chickens, and this wonderful tea trellis grape arbor that went around his garden. And his garden was big. It was like a quarter acre, which is a pretty big garden. And he was a master craftsman, tinkerer, a little bit of an inventor. And so dad got this kind of ecology, this environmental bent. I'm not going to use chemical fertilizers from him. And so I've never had a conversion experience. I mean, I just grew up being a non-chemical environmentalist. And what's funny is, growing up, again, our family was pretty conservative. So you go to church, and all these conservative Christians are making fun of the environmentalists and tree huggers and all that stuff. And our farmer friends were all dope smoking hippies. This was like early 70s. And so all the farm stuff we went to was all about composting and straw bale housing, and
mm,
all this stuff. So I really appreciate that I grew up kind of spanning those worlds, and it's given me a deep appreciation for number one, assuming that what another person believes is well intentioned. Now we can
mm.
just, I mean, and this bodes well for me today. I mean, my greenie friends, that they complain that I don't say Monsanto is evil. I don't say Monsanto is evil. I think it's comprised of a bunch of people that are misguided, and I disagree with, but I think they're well intentioned. I don't think it helps the conversation to say that you're bad intentioned, even if we disagree violently. I'm going to assume that your intentions are good, and we just come from two different perspectives. And I find that is much more helpful in having conversations, and finding places where we can agree on, rather than whatever cancel culture, censorship, and get out of there. So intentionality. When we came to the farm in 1961, with that background, we dad was he was an accountant, so he was a numbers guy,
Hmm.
and he saw the chemical farming approach as like a drug addiction. You get on this treadmill, and you got to put on the chemicals, and you've always got to, they've become more expensive. They become more toxic, because you got to get the same kick, you got to get a bigger hit, right?
Oh yeah.
And, and so so he kind of saw that as a no in no win deal. And so, we're looking around, and how do you do this? And I remember like yesterday, it was a Sunday afternoon drive. We went somewhere. I don't remember whether it was north or south. We went somewhere about an hour away to a farm that was using portable shelters. I don't even remember what was in them. I don't know if it was lambs, pigs, chickens, or what it was. All I remember was coming home. Dad was just like a child, with enthusiasm over just the idea that you could have mobile, portable infrastructure. You didn't have to build stationary stuff, and so portability, mobility became it became the foundation of everything that we did, because animals move; they don't stay in the same place. And so, he built we raised veal calves, built a veal barn, built a cow shade mobile. We built portable rabbit shelters that then became portable chicken shelters, and that portability thing was just a really, really big deal. So our intentionality was, how can we mimic what we see in nature, the patterns in nature, God's design in nature? How can we mimic that? And so, it's not that complicated. It's, animals move, and soil is built with perennials. Perennials build soil more than annuals, so we're going to reduce tillage. Nature doesn't plow anything, and the soil is built with carbon, decomposition, not 10 bags of chemical fertilizer. And so with those very basic principles, we just move forward with the program. And wow, today it's it's pretty different.
I bet it is. Yeah, I saw a video on YouTube. You were doing a tour and you were showcasing the chicken houses and how they move. And so they're there for a day or two, and then you move them, and it looks like a grid pattern. As you're moving them, they're stomping around in the field, eating bugs, moving around manure. It's so cool. And I mean, it seems better for the environment, but also it seems better for the chickens. They're not in this small barn. They're actually an active part in nature.
Yeah, absolutely. They're in small modules, as opposed to one great big facility. There's no flies, there's no odor, there's no fecal particulate. The manure is going right on the grass, and then they get a whole new spot tomorrow. I mean, they get their bedding changed every single day. So yes, it's healthier for the chickens. It's happier for the chickens. It puts them in an environment that that allows them to fully express their chickenness.
Yeah.
And, so that's a big deal. And you know what? It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And when you start talking about building a direct market clientele, a brand, to get your value added through direct marketing, you'd better be aesthetically and aromatically, sensually romantic. I mean, you'd better be a place that people like to come, walk around, look around. And you probably know we make a big deal that we have a 24/7, 365 open door policy. Anyone can come to the farm at any time from anywhere in the world, unannounced, and see anything anywhere. That's our commitment to transparency. And it really resonates with people and gives you a lot of street cred when you're out there, when you say anybody can come and see anything anytime. There's no locked doors, there's no skull and crossbones. We're not putting anything on the soil that you can't eat. I mean, in small quantities at least.
Yeah.
And it's so those chickens out on they are so attractively magnetic that people, it resonates with people. They're taking pictures, they're doing social media posts, it needs to be beautiful. Good farming should smell and look good.
I like that. Yeah. And I mean, that transparency is huge, because I feel like, especially with social media, we can see what's going on at a farm and people have questions and they want to go see what's going on. But sometimes they go to a farm and they see a practice and they're like, I don't know if I agree with that. But that's awesome. You guys have that transparency, and you have that, like you're talking about, like you want to create kind of a romantic atmosphere there where they really enjoy it. They really appreciate the agriculture and really also the practices. I'm sure, that when you have people out there, are they like, oh, I didn't know it could be like this. Like I thought it could only be factory farming, quote unquote.
Absolutely. The probably the most common, there's two most common comments we get. The first most common comment is, I'm here with all these animals and there's no smell, there's no odor, there's no flies. I could have a picnic lunch out here. So the smell thing is a big deal. That's certainly number one, and number two for us, this is almost the other end of the spectrum, is that the buildings and all, we're not flashy. We don't have any white fences.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a threadbare look, and I don't want to make it sound like it's all run down. It's not run down, but my point is, we don't show off buildings and structures and machinery. What we show off is grass, earthworms, cows, chickens. I mean, come look at the soil and the production of it. We don't showcase. We're not showcasing equipment and buildings. If that's what you want to showcase, you're probably not putting your money in the right place.
That's a really good point. You should be putting it towards the livestock, towards the land. And, I've interviewed like a bunch of people that are focusing more on regenerative ag, whether they're ranchers or just regular farmers growing crops. And it seems like it's this really growing trend of being intentional with the soil. Whether you're a rancher or a row cropper, if you pay attention to the soil, you're going to get better products. You're going to get better beef, better chicken, better whatever you might be growing, which is huge.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and of course that's where we've put our attention. A lot of people don't realize when we came in 1961, we bought I call it the armpit of the community. It was the most worn out rock pile, gullied place in the area. Probably mainly because it had been absentee owned for about 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
What happens a lot of times when people lease land, they just take and don't put back. And so our farm suffered from that. So when we came, we had large areas, Trevor, the size of, they were, a quarter acre in size, that were just like round saucers in the field, solid rock, solid bedrock. No grass, no weed, no nothing, just solid bedrock. In fact, we had so little soil when Dad started. He read Andre Voisin, Grass Productivity. So we got to start moving these cows around.
Mm-hmm.
So he developed kind of electric fencing. How are we going to hold up electric fencing? We didn't have enough soil to hold up electric fencing. So he poured concrete in old used car tires, stuck a 1/2-inch pipe down, and my brother and I, we were little kids, and we could kind of heave these off the tractor platform as he drove out through the field. And then he'd go along and put electric fence stakes down in the 1/2-inch pipe that was in that concrete, so that we could put up electric fence. And I'm so I get teary at this point. The blessing of my life is, and I'm not that old, but in my lifetime, I've watched those areas now fill up with now about 12 inches of soil. Now it's not 3 feet like it was 500 years ago, but it's 12 inches of soil. There's no rocks. They've been completely covered up with soil. We didn't haul that soil in. That soil grew like new skin over a scab. And so literally, when I was a kid, we could scarcely feed 10 cows. Today we feed 100 cows on the same acreage. It's just phenomenal what a difference this has made. And so, my encouragement to people, when people ask, what should I buy? I'm getting ready to buy a farm, buy some property. What I say, buy junk, because the land is living and it'll heal. It can heal like living things. And so, don't buy somebody else's stewardship, buy somebody's poor stewardship, and then you make it better.
Where do you think that original thing came from, where people wanted to buy land and then just fix it up, like bring in all this dirt, bring in all these chemicals, instead of being intentional with the land? Like, where do you think that originally came from?
Well, I think there's a general idea in the farming community that's fairly linear, kind of Western reductionist linear, where what does my farm need? And they can't believe that the farm can generate what it needs itself. I need to bring in, the seeds, bring in the fertility, bring in the, whatever the weed control. It's this idea, and I don't want to just cheapen this by saying, but it's a factory idea, but it's the input output thing.
Mhm.
We bring in the inputs from here, and then we send the outputs out over here. Whereas we see the farm as like a big reservoir, and of solar energy, solar power. And what we're trying to do is build more and more biomass. How can we capture more sunlight? How can we get more efficient decomposition, and close that loop so that almost everything is in situ. So and the beauty of this is that when Putin invaded Ukraine, and fertilizer jumped like 400%,
Mhm.
because fertilizer comes out of Russia. That's on the front page of all the news media now. It didn't affect us at all, because we don't buy any of that. Our fertility comes from compost. So our fertilizer budget, we have a great big wood chipper. And so we upgrade the woods. We weed the junky and the crookeds and stuff, and upgrade the wood lot. That becomes our carbon base for the livestock to build the compost to put back out on the fields. So this is all done, on site. And I think that idea of seeing the farm as a kind of a self-contained whole, where you have very little coming in and generally little going out, where it's this building thing, I think is not common among Western farmers.
Yeah, it also, I mean, just listening to you talk about that, it also seems like it's an age-old problem, or an age-old issue of patience. Like, some people want to fix the land right now, dump whatever they have into it, and others see the long-term benefits of being intentional and focusing on it as your farm itself is an ecosystem instead of it's part of the ecosystem. Like, your farm, if you focus on it, you can build up the ecosystem through very intentional practices like you guys are doing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'll give you another example. So probably the most unknown and unseen asset that we have here is, for many, many years, we've been pecking away at water.
Mm.
Uh, we're on this piece of property here. We're actually kind of water poor because we don't have any big springs, or we just don't have. So permaculture style, we've gone up. We do have elevation, though. We have a lot of elevation on the farm, so we've gone up into some of these valleys, and have built ponds, up higher, permaculture style. So we now have about 10 or 12 miles of buried water line, with an access every 100 yards all around the fields. So we have gravity fed, no pumps, no electricity, gravity fed 70 psi water, which 70 psi water is like a fire hose. And so we have this high pressure water coming from these high elevation permaculture style ponds that gravity feeds throughout the whole farm to give us water for for all the livestock that moves around. And we've built enough ponds to actually store enough water from winter runoff and snows and things that we can use it for irrigation in the summer. So between the livestock water and the irrigation in a drought, we've invested in resiliency in the system, rather than asking for for insurance from off the farm. Instead, we're building our insurance right here. And that's it's taken a long time to get where we are, but man, oh man, to be able to go out anywhere in a field and be able to have high pressure clean water without even any electricity is pretty cool.
And I'm sure that simplifies things too. I mean, whenever it gets cold, or if something goes wrong, you've got to go out there and fix it. But because there's no electricity, you've got that problem solved already.
Yeah, exactly. So, several years ago, we had this derecho come through here. Power was out, and our water just kept on going. I mean, as long as gravity works, we've got water. And when gravity quits working, I'm out of here.
Yeah, true. If your gravity's not working, there are much bigger problems to worry about. So you don't need to worry about farming by then.
Yeah, exactly right.
So I know a lot of people, they love the idea of regenerative ag, but there's a lot of people that have questions about it and if it can feed all of us. Like I know this is a topic that you've talked with countless people, even on the Joe Rogan show,
Right.
about if this practice can actually feed us all. So what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. So, can this feed us all? So, not only can it feed us all, it's the only system that ultimately can.
Mm,
And so, let's drill down on that a little bit. First of all, realize that for the first time in human history, the world is throwing away 40% of its human edible food. We've never had this level of waste before. Why do we have this level of waste? Well, because we have extremely long supply chains, long warehouse stays. We have spoil dates. We have spoilage. Tractor trailer loads of milk being dumped because somebody didn't wash their antibiotics right. I mean, there's a million million leaks within the system. I mean, I was talking to a guy. He was in Zimbabwe in a green bean processor shipping green beans to Europe to someplace in Europe. And he said, "Yeah, we're shipping 2 tons a day, and we're throwing away 2 tons." I said, "Throwing away 2 tons of green beans? Why are you throwing away?" Well, they're crooked, they're too fat, they're too thin, they're too long, too short. They got to fit the box, and throwing them away. And so that's the kind of thing that happens, all over the world right now, because things are so centralized and long chains between the farm and the consumer. So the world right now, we could increase the world's population by 40% right now and still have plenty of food if we went to a less wasteful system. So that's number one. Number two is that that biology. I mean, I can tell you on our farm, we are far more productive per acre. We get about 4 times the production per acre that the county average is, because we're doing this mob stocking, herbivorous, solar conversion, lignified carbon sequestration, fertilization. We're moving the animals around all the time, and we're stacking. So the pasture is not just for so not only are we getting a lot more production on the herbivore, but then we're stacking turkeys, laying chickens, broiler chickens, sheep, ducks on that same acreage. Permaculture, you start stacking all that on the same acreage. I mean, not on the same square foot on the same day, but staggered, and you're generating multiple enterprises on that. Then you add in the ability to irrigate in a drought. Now you can hold your production through the hot time. That's a game changer as well. And so the thing that people need to understand is that the biological or regenerative understanding is essentially depending on a carbon economy. So the difference is life fundamentally chemical or mechanical, or is life fundamentally biological? And those are the two kind of competing schools of thought. And the mechanical really only came into use in 1837, when Justus von Liebig, the Austrian biochemist, using his vacuum tubes, told the world that all of life is just a reconfiguration of nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. That was the first time on a grand scale that people actually started viewing life as actually inanimate, or just protoplasmic structure without some sort of life mystery, something that's special about life, whether it's an actinomycetes in the soil or a person, and that permeated through. Well, World War I, World War II, NPK, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, are the basis for explosives, for bombs, ammunition. And so the two world wars financed the mining, manufacture, distribution, bagging, and branding and marketing of NPK. So you come to the end of World War II, and you've got this farmer, he's expecting his sons to come back from the war. Well, one of them is killed and one of them is maimed, and all he's done all of his life is shovel, 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 shovel. He doesn't have a front end loader. He doesn't have a chainsaw. Doesn't have a chipper. He doesn't have a way to feed the soil carbon, to actually have a carbon economy. And so he's going to grab that bag of 10, 10, 10 cheap. It's available when it comes. Now, in 1943, Sir Albert Howard brought to the world the scientific recipe for aerobic compost in his book, An Agricultural Testament, 1943. But to do that efficiently, we needed chainsaws, chippers, front-end loaders, PTO-powered manure spreaders. We needed all that stuff. And it took about 20 years from 1943 for that kind of infrastructure to develop. Well, in those 20 years, the mechanical chemical approach dominated our land-grant universities, the the food system. And so it was like after World War II, there was a starting gun on a race went off, but the chemical folks had a 1 lap head start, and it took a while for biology to come up. Now biology is spinning circles around chemicals, but chemical is so entrenched that the assumption is we can't do it without these chemicals. The truth is, I'll close with this idea. The truth is that if we had had a Manhattan Project for compost, not only would we have fed the world, we would have done it without 3-legged salamanders, infertile frogs, and a dead zone the size of Rhode Island in the Gulf of Mexico.
Mm-hmm. That is huge. And that's a lot to unpack there. I mean, and it seems like luckily we're slowly coming back around to that biology thing like you're talking about. And I don't know, it still feels like a lot of people are hanging on to the fertilizer trend and just doing that because it's worked for them. I mean, they see it working, but maybe they don't see that dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, which I'm here in the Florida Panhandle. So very much aware of the impact that it's having here on the Gulf.
Sure, absolutely. Well, nature is unbelievably forgiving. Most of us can take a few punches and still stand up, and so we can be thankful for that. But the problem with that is we often don't see acute results of today's activities.
Yeah.
And so here we are, dumping glyphosate, GMOs, chemicals and whatever, chemical fertilizers. We're depleting the organic matter. We're killing earthworms. But nature just keeps trying to, it's a survivor. It's like you look at these, methamphetamine addicts, and you hear their stories. You say, how are you still standing? How do you do this? How do you survive? And somehow, people figure out, and nature's that way. And which means that that nature does respond. It responds incredibly when we stop abusing it and start to caress it instead. We've got this notion that nature is a reluctant partner. We've got to dominate and control, and I'm gonna wrestle. I'm gonna make you do this. When actually nature is a benevolent lover, just wanting to be caressed in the right places. That's a very different view.
That is very different. And say that there was a Manhattan Project for compost. What would that look like?
Oh boy. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah, good for you. I'm excited to. So what would that look like? What that would look like is that we would take all the money. I don't know what these figures are, but all the money spent on chemical fertilizer, which it's a lot, especially now.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And all the money spent fighting fires out west. Okay. I mean, I know that's like $5 billion. All right. So we take those two figures, chemical fertilizer and fires. All right. And we take that money, and that money then finances. And I'm not saying we take it. I'm not saying this is a government program. I'm just saying the marketplace does this. Okay. And we simply substitute, instead of all that, we now start turning chippers loose. I mean, we've got BLM land, national forest, state parks. They're weedy, they're overgrown, they're fire hazards. We need to be harvesting and thinning. I'm a big believer in permaculture. We need more trees, we need more forest and fewer trees. Basically, the North American forests are weedy. They're crowded. They're overcrowded. I mean, I was out at Yellowstone Park doing a conference 2 years ago, and I mean, I could hardly get out of the park fast enough. It was horrible. I mean, the place needs it's way overcrowded with trees. Trees need room, okay, and of course you go up through Colorado. I mean, there are just square miles of dead trees. So we take that biomass, we upgrade our woods, we take the dead stuff, we chip it, and that becomes the carbon base for large scale composting. And that large scale composting then feeds our soil. Now, what this means is we're going to reduce the size. We're not going to have, factory farms. We're going to democratize that, spread all those animals out across the landscape so that their manure, instead of being toxic, comes at a rate that is a blessing. I mean, as a culture, we have taken the blessing of manure and urine and we have turned it into a liability due to our concentration scale. So you get scale in my world. You get scale not by centralization but by duplication, and so you have thousands and thousands of farms like us instead of just a few mega farms, with millions and millions of critters. So then you match up the biomass with the manure, large scale composting. Obviously, you don't feed any herbivore grain. That reduces the grain need by about 65 to 70%. Now you don't have to plow, and even the tillage becomes crimping or pasture cropping, which are both ways to produce grain without tillage, without herbicides, without fertilizer, and you simply move everything to a perennial, carbon centric, closely managed, decentralized system.
That decentralization is huge because, I mean, going back to the pandemic, we saw the strain that the food supply chain had because of, there's so few packing plants here processing beef and chicken and everything. So it seems like it's a great idea if we decentralize all of that. We have more farmers doing what you guys are doing, and you have better access to food no matter where you are.
Yeah, just imagine if in 2020, the spring of 2020, if instead of our country being supplied by 300 5,000 person mega processing facilities, instead the country had been supplied by 300,000 50 employee unity oriented processing facilities, do you think we would have had as big a hiccup? It's an obvious answer. Of course not, because a speedboat can much quicker than an aircraft carrier. When you're navigating unknown shoals and rocky waters, you don't want to be in an aircraft carrier. You want to be in a speedboat.
That's a really good analogy. I like that. And I mean, one of the things that I think is kind of, I don't know, a bottleneck for that, there aren't nearly as many people that want to get involved in agriculture. So how do you think we can change that to where we can have, hundreds of thousands of farms like you guys, like around the states and around the country?
Yeah. So we run a professional formal apprenticeship program here. And every year we have about close to 100 applicants for 11 spots. So I really believe, Trevor, I really believe that if young people thought that they could make a nice living on a farm, there would be young people flocking to agriculture. but they're told by family, by friends, by school guidance counselors. Not only is farming a redneck hillbilly vocation for academically disadvantaged people, but there's also no money in it. There's no money in it, and so you get the combination of those things. And so yeah, I think if you present the option of a white collar salary on a farm, I don't think there's any problem with young people coming to it. But that is not the thing that's been presented to them, and that's a shame. And I'll say this too. The second thing would be that if the marketplace, if consumers would buy intentionally and realize that their dollar is voting for a certain kind of food and for a certain kind of farmscape, so that they take responsibility. I mean, people say, "Well, these farmers ought to do differently. They shouldn't do blah 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 blah." Well, you know what? Farmers have always produced for the marketplace, and when people want Lunchables, Hot Pockets, and squeezable Velveeta cheese, farmers and the cheapest food around, farmers are going to produce to that standard. And so ultimately consumers set the farmscape standard. And if you want a different farmscape, i.e. young people coming in, better land stewardship, better animal, better nutrient density, all those kind of things, then you have to invest in that kind of foodscape. The little picture I like to paint for people is imagine you're sitting down to dinner. You got this plate of food in front of you, looking through that plate to the other side of it. On the other side is everything from the farmer to the processor to the distributor, all the things. Well, when you squint and look through that plate of food to the other side of it, is that a culture, a landscape? Is that a place that you want your children to inherit? That's the question.
That's a big question. I mean, yeah, and a lot of times you don't know where that food's coming from, but if you're making more conscious decisions, you can learn and figure out where it's coming from. And of course, if you live locally to those farms, you could go there and visit. You can see exactly the processes that are going on to raise your food.
Right. Absolutely. So yeah, we are at our most fundamental level. We are local food addicts. But in 2019, we began shipping nationwide because we started seeing an erosion of people who, well, why should I even drive 10 miles to your farm when I can get on somebody's website and get stuff delivered right to my door? And you hear that several times, and you have some customers that aren't coming for some reason, and you find out that that's the story, and you realize everybody wants to be nostalgic. Nostalgia is good, nostalgia sells. But let me tell you, nostalgia is only good until it becomes obsolete. And so you've got to learn the day to leave nostalgia right before you become obsolete.
That's really true, man. I love that. You can use nostalgia, but don't be obsolete from it. But yeah, I mean, consumers really drive the industry. If they want organic food, farmers are going to have to buy more organic. If they don't want GMO, farmers are going to have to stop buying organic or stop growing GMO. And so consumers sometimes often forget that about how powerful they are, and literally what they buy drives the industry. So if they want cheap food, we're going to be producing cheap food. But if we want regeneratively raised, sustainably raised, that's going to dictate the market.
Yeah. And the beauty of that is it's not a bad investment, because guess what? You're going to get more nutrition. You're going, we submitted our eggs to an analysis, a nutritional analysis several years ago. And the USDA, I call it the USDA, but the official USDA nutrition label on an egg is like an egg has 48 micrograms of folic acid per egg. Our eggs tested 1,038 micrograms per egg. I mean, we're not talking about little percentages of differences. We're talking about major differences. Grass finished beef has 300% more riboflavin than grain fed beef. I mean, these numbers are just huge. And so, I don't know. I don't want to get down a rabbit hole here of dysfunctional society, but there are a lot of things to be concerned about today. Economically, socially, crime in the cities. I mean, there's a lot of things to be concerned about. Well, depending on where you are on that spectrum of do you think things are going down or not? Wherever you are on that. Let me tell you, if you are concerned about things, what we say, the wheels coming off, there's one thing that you don't want when you're in societal societal breakdown. You don't want to be sick. You want to be healthy. And so eating well and investing in nutrition is one of the best things you can do today and in preparation for whatever may come tomorrow.
Yeah, I've seen so many people lately get, I don't know, influencers on social media, whatever it might be, blog posts. People are starting to pay more attention to their food instead of, just going directly to medication or something. They're being more intentional about, just worry about the nutrients you're getting from high quality food. And that can solve a really good amount of your problems, like with your health. Like if you're being intentional, I feel like that's the whole theme of this podcast, maybe just being intentional with how you're growing, with how you're eating and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's a lot to unpack there, though.
Yeah, it is. And the easy thing is to be is to not be intentional. I mean, we've been told now for decades, you don't have to be in your kitchen. You don't have to have we'll take care of your food. We'll take care of everything. And as freedom comes from not doing chores, not cutting firewood. You don't have to participate anymore. Just let us do it, and you'll have more time for video games, Netflix, and football games.
I mean, I'm super guilty of that too. I mean, like just we can DoorDash whatever, we can do whatever. It's so all about the convenience, so we don't have to worry about it. But you got to be intentional. Like we've got to pay attention to what we're putting in our bodies, about how we're growing it. I mean, what do you think we can do? I don't know, with local government or national government to kind of drive all this home. Like we need to have more intentional farms. We need to have more intentional diets. Like, how do you think we can combat all that?
Anybody that knows me knows that my first answer to that is always we need freedom. We need. I promote a food emancipation proclamation. So we take the shackles off of the food system so that farmers and consumers can transact business together. I'm not talking about import export. I'm not even talking about Walmart and Costco. I'm just saying if I want to come to your farm as a voluntary consenting adult and exercise freedom of choice to get your rabbit, your tomato sauce, your charcuterie, we should be able to have that transaction without a bureaucrat being involved. And right now there are thousands and thousands of farmers ready to access the marketplace that don't, because of these onerous regulations that were created by the consumer advocacy folks like Ralph Nader to protect them from the industry. But a farm like ours, a small neighborhood farm, is not the industry. There's two totally different things. But government regulations are always scale prejudicial, and any regulation that's scale prejudicial. I mean, for example, if I want to make charcuterie, and the government license in order to sell the charcuterie says, well, you got to have a $5,000 thermometer to keep 24/7 tabs on the temperature. That's nothing if you're making a tractor trailer load of charcuterie, of pepperoni. All right. But if I'm just making a 5 gallon bucket of pepperoni as a little, side hustle in my, as a cottage industry for my neighbors and folks at church, suddenly that $5,000 thermometer puts me out of business. I'm not going to buy the $5,000 for a 5 gallon bucket. So that's where we need to be able to define either by volume, by type of transaction, i.e., direct consumer producer, by locale, only within a certain approximate area that you can sell. There are a lot of ways to define this, but somehow to allow a parallel universe of entrepreneurism to access the marketplace.
That's a really good take. I mean, because farms are just like the people that work on them. I mean, there's no two farms that are the same, they're the same size, have the same practices. So why should a farm that's this small have to follow the exact same laws that are a much larger farm that can afford to purchase all the equipment? Why do they need to follow the same thing? Like, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I get the intentionality there that the government's doing, but also it's kind of dumb. Like, we need to fix that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are all sorts of scale exemptions. I mean, think about, well, like here in Virginia, you can have an unlicensed daycare in your home as long as you don't go over 3 kids. In Virginia here, we can have an unlicensed elder care in our home as long as you don't go over 3. And that's reasonable, because if all you're keeping is 3 kids, or all you're keeping is 3 old folks, if it's just 3, there's no bureaucracy there. I mean, the family that's bringing them, they know you, they see you. It's not like there's some nameless, faceless staff, that's checking off boxes and seeing things. And so the relational aspect compensates for the bureaucratic paperwork. And that's the rationale. And that's what I'm suggesting, that if we had that kind of reasonableness applied to the food sector, we would see an explosion of cottage industries, neighborhood food transaction capabilities that we can only imagine right now.
Well, hopefully this can happen, because I feel like you and a lot of people like Polyface Farm are really inspiring a bunch of farmers, or even, which is super exciting, like people that are outside of ag, but they see what you're doing and they want to do it, which I think is huge, because we need more people like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When I talk like this, the non-farmers, they get it immediately. It resonates. Yeah, I get it. I'd love to get, Aunt Matilda's quiche if I could. She makes great quiche. I'd like to buy it from her, or food deserts, in urban sectors, food deserts. If a single mom of 3 kids could put in a garden and a vacant lot and make pot pies for the neighborhood, you wouldn't have a food desert. And so there's all sorts of ramifications. Ultimately, we need food freedom. And the courts, they have ruled very specifically that American citizens do not have a right to choose their food. And I find that in a time when we're choosing, we tell the government, I don't want you to get in my bedroom, and I don't want to get you in my sex life and all that stuff. And we're saying, you can, but you can get in my mouth. That's fine. And I say, when the government gets between my lips and my throat, that's an invasion of privacy.
Oh yeah, we don't want them in our bedroom, but we don't mind when they're controlling what we're eating. And then you think about it, you're like, hold the phone.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
it is. I mean, and you're doing an amazing job, like talking to people all over the world. And you have been on the Joe Rogan show like multiple times talking about that, because it seems like lately he's been on a kick. He's interviewed you. He's interviewed White Oak Pastures, which is awesome. And so it seems like a lot of people outside the industry are getting more interested in stuff like that. And also, like, those are huge platforms to be able to talk about all this stuff.
Oh yeah, yes, they are. And it's really going. I mean, we're in May 13th, we're having the Rogue Food Conference. So John Moody and I have started this kind of a little thing called the Rogue Food Conference. And basically the moniker is let's not try compliance. Let's do circumvention. There comes a time when these laws, like I'm describing here, become so obtuse and tyrannical that it's actually more efficient to circumvent to be creative enough to circumvent than to try to comply. And this thing's gaining steam. We started this about 3 years ago, and boy, it's just gaining steam. The next one's going to be, going to be here, and here at Polyface, it'll be one of the gatherings for the year. But we'll have Congressman Tom Massey here. The maverick from Congress. He's fantastic. We'll have Amos Miller, the farmer that you may be aware of, has faced all this USDA fining for having his personal membership, private membership association, and so the rogue food idea is we're taking people who are creative enough and have enough savvy to basically circumvent the system and putting them on a stage and saying, how do you do this? How do you do this guerrilla marketing, this under the radar stuff? And it's pretty fun. So yes, that is all part of this the parallel universe gaining steam. It's all part of the homestead tsunami. I mean, people are leaving the city, coming to the country, and it's a homestead tsunami. So yeah, there are some really neat undercurrents going on in the culture right now that I think are very, very positive. Some stimulated by COVID, which they always say that a crisis does not make a movement, but it simply either accelerates it or makes it more obvious to a movement that's already happening. And I think these trends were already happening. They were nascent, but Black Swan, Putin, Ukraine, burning down the cities, defund the police, all those things have stimulated a concern that's big enough in the minds of a lot of people to jump ship.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's been weird because I've interviewed a lot of farms that they did farm tours before the pandemic, and they had some moderate success. But then after the pandemic, they skyrocketed to where they had to start selling tickets. Yes. They had to do like almost pivot their entire operations to fit consumer demand because people wanted to get out, or maybe they wanted to homestead and learn from those farmers because people, they're locked up and then they're free because the pandemic slowly but surely, not as crazy as it was, but they're like, I want to change up my life. Like I did not like being locked up. I want to be outside more. So how can I do that? But yeah, it's been very weird, but it's been very cool to kind of see the whole industry as a whole kind of make a huge kind of rebound, really.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. That's exactly right.
Well, Joel, this has been amazing. So cool to chat with you. If people are in Virginia, how can they go and tour the farm? And also, you've got a lot of avenues where you kind of reach out and talk with people. Where can people follow you and follow Polyface Farm?
Yeah, so our website is Polyface Farms, Polyface. If you just type in Poly, it'll probably come up. Polyface Farms. We have a website, and it has our summer tour schedule. We do 8 or 9 Lunatic tours a summer. And so these are 2.5-hour hay wagon Lunatic tours. We do, of course, we have our 2-day Polyface intensive discovery seminars. Those are 2-day 6-meal. They're worth coming just for the food, trust me. And then we have all these gatherings going on for you to come. And so there's a lot going on, and we are honored and humbled and thrilled to have folks come and see. We know that there is magic when you come and see, and then when you add taste, when you taste it and you see it, you're hooked. You'll never be the same again. So we know that ultimately that is the whatever the witness, the conversion outreach that we need to do, because many people don't believe it's possible or it can be done at scale. So we take that blinder off, and then they've never eaten really, really good stuff before. And you put that, sausage, egg, that hot dog, when we make hot dogs, you put that in their mouth, and I mean, they're done. Okay, I'm in, I'm done. So it's fun. It's fun to watch people have that final tip over point. So yeah, visit the website, polyfacefarms.com. I've written 15 books. You can get books on there. There's a lot. And if you're not a farmer and you want good food, we'll be glad to ship to you too. Shameless plug there. But it's a very comprehensive website, and you can go there and browse and see a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's a great website that highlights everything that you guys are doing. And kind of like what you said, you guys are kind of taking like 3 blindfolds off. Like 1, you can do it. 2, you can do it at scale. And 3, the products are amazing and they are very superior as to what you could get doing it any other way. And my wife and I are actually moving to DC for 3 months, and then we'll be back here in Florida. So we are definitely going to have to plan a visit and come see you guys.
Yes, you sure will. You sure will. We'll look forward to your visit coming out. Absolutely.
It'll be so fun. Well, Joel, thanks so much for coming on the show. Thanks so much for what you're doing. We really appreciate it. And best of luck as you continue to do all this amazing stuff and, spread the message of regenerative ag and, the amazing things that this industry can do.
Thank you, Trevor. It's been a delight and a privilege to be with you. Yeah, blessings on you.